Good morning and welcome, everyone. I call to order the special meeting of the Kansas Corporation Commission on Wednesday, May 24th, 2023. I'm Susan Duffy. I'm serving as chair of the commission, and I am joined today by Commissioner Keene and Commissioner French. Commissioners, we have one item on the agenda today. It is a noticed item for docket number 23 NETE 585 STG. This is in the matter of the application of NextEra Energy Transmission Southwest LLC for a siting permit for the construction of a 345 kV transmission line that runs through Coffee, Anderson, Allen, Bourbon, and Crawford counties, Kansas. And we also have with us today Assistant General Counsel David Cohen. Mr. Cohen, if you will explain.
Good morning, Commissioners. Before you is an order on NextEra Energy Transmission Southwest LLC's application for a siting permit. This follows up our 22 NETE 419 COC docket, where NextEra sought and was granted with conditions a limited certificate of convenience and necessity to construct, own, and operate and maintain an approximately 94-mile single circuit line that runs from Wolf Creek substation to the Blackberry substation. I'm going to reference that 419 docket several times because they're related. As part of that docket, in the report and recommendation, Commission staff noted that about approximately 25 miles of the proposed line paralleled one of Evergy's existing lines. On August 29th, 2022, the Commission granted the CCN with several conditions. One such condition was that NextEra and Evergy work together to create a comprehensive assessment of the double circuit option. And double circuiting would be where both the lines that run parallel would in fact be on one set of hardware, so one set of poles. So the relationship between the two dockets is complicated, but let's take a minute to explain it. The 419 docket gave NextEra a certificate of public convenience and necessity, which allows them to act as a public utility. However, as a public utility, they also needed to seek permission of the Commission before they built any transmission lines under KSA 661177 at SEC. Under those statutes, before a public utility can begin construction, site preparation, they must seek permission of the Commission for exactly where the line will go. The Commission then takes into account the necessity for and reasonableness of the location of the line, as well as the benefits to both consumers, both inside and outside the state, and the economic development. The Commission may put conditions on the permit as might be reasonable to protect the rights of interested parties. A lot of testimony that actually came out of the 419 docket at the evidentiary hearing. And so in this docket, the Commission took administrative notice of the evidence in that docket, so as to not reinvent the wheel and have to reestablish facts that were already established in the previous docket. While that seems redundant, and it is because both dockets required a finding of necessity and convenience, or necessity, there's good reason for it. As that is, while every utility gets to build transmission lines, had the bid not gone to NextEra, had it gone to an established public utility, we wouldn't have needed the 419 docket, and we still would have needed to establish necessity for the line. Evergy, the IBEW Local 304, and the McGee's, who are landowners, were all granted intervention. On March 1st and 2nd, the Commission held public hearings in Iola and Girard, and the public was able to give commentary to the commissioners. An evidentiary hearing was held on May 2nd through the 4th, where the Commission heard the testimony of witnesses, and parties were able to introduce evidence and cross-examine those witnesses. So this order finds that the route the whole order is about whether the route they selected was necessary, and the order finds it was necessary, but I'm going to go over some of the issues that the order addresses specifically. To select the route, NextEra hired the engineering firm of Burns McDowell, who analyzed over 729 possible routes and selected the top 5% with the lowest impact for further analysis. Factors included distance to homes, length along existing rights of way, and sensitive species. They arrived at their preferred route, which is listed as Route 65. One important aspect of this docket is micrositing, which allows NextEra to make minor changes to the route without having to seek commission approval. This right has been granted in the past, and the commission does so now. Micrositing will assist NextEra in negotiating with and accommodating landowner needs and wishes as the route progresses. Route 65, one of the reroutes that this orders is a reroute around the McGee's. Route 65 took the line in proximity to the McGee's home. The McGee's proposed a reroute which would move the line much farther away. After analyzing the reroute, both staff and NextEra determined that the reroute would be unreasonable, as it would increase the cost by approximately $575,000. But NextEra proposed an alternative reroute which moved the line just further from the McGee's home, but increased the cost by only $75,000. NextEra requests the commission allow the alternative reroute with the flexibility to microsite back to the originally proposed route should local conditions such as sensitive species prove that the reroute was unreasonable. The McGee's request the commission order this reroute without the flexibility to microsite back to the originally proposed route. Since both parties seem satisfied with the alternative reroute, the commission will order it. However, if NextEra determines it needs to revert back to the original route, it will need to seek permission of the commission to do so. And let me just talk about 2 or 3 more issues that the order addresses. I know we're going a little long, but this is an important, and it's sort of a big docket. At the public hearing, we heard commentary of the public, and a lot of the public expressed concern about EMF, which is electromagnetic radiation, including the McGee's. Based on the testimony received, there has been no established causal link between EMF and health effects. And while Kansas has no EMF guidelines, New York and Florida do, but the EMF predicted from the line was well below those guidelines. However, NextEra has agreed to do an EMF study on homes within the right-of-way. And so this, at the request of landowners, this order is satisfied with that condition, but we want to make sure that NextEra notifies the landowners that they have this right. And so it orders NextEra to make them aware, to make the landowners aware of this right, and to inform staff of their efforts to do so. Next is dead-end structures, which these structures are larger and stronger and would fall down, would resist falling in the event of line failure, resist better than normal structures. Staff request we put dead-end structures at the end of both highway crossings, or all highway crossings. The order finds that these are not currently a requirement, and that for any other utility, and declines to make them a condition of the siting permit. Evergy requested buffer zones between their right-of-way and NextEra's right-of-way. The order finds these are similarly not required. Lastly, construction like this involves carrying heavy equipment over county roads, which may cause damage to those roads. Staff has requested as a condition that NextEra enter in agreements with the counties that NextEra would pay for pre and post construction inspections to determine if any damage was done to county roads, and then reimburse the counties for that damage. NextEra claims they've already offered such agreements to the counties, so this requirement is moot. The order finds that agrees that the requirement is moot, but should the counties agree to these agreements, that a copy of the agreement should be given to staff for verification. And with that, I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Are there any questions? I'll start with Commissioner Keen.
Good morning, Chair Debbie.
Good morning.
No questions. However, I do have some comments.
Yes, and there will be an opportunity for comments at the end is what I'm proposing. Thank you. I'll turn to Commissioner French. Do you have questions or comments, Mr. Cohen?
Likewise, I have no questions. I will have some comments, but I will happily save those till later.
Okay, very good. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve this order,
I'll make the motion to approve the order.
and I'll second that motion. Hearing that we have a motion and a second, all those in favor, please vote aye.
Are we doing discussion before we vote?
I thought we would do discussion after. Is that all right? Or would you like to do discussion now?
Commissioner Keen, do you? I think I would probably like to make my.
You want to make your-
I prefer to do it first.
Okay, very good. We'll hold off on the vote. And I will start with you, Commissioner Keen. Do you have comments on this matter?
Yes, thank you. As proposed, I will be voting to deny the NextEra transmission line siting application for the 94-mile Wolf Creek to Blackberry 345 kV electric transmission line. My reasons for dissenting from the Commission's approval of this line siting application are set out in detail in my dissenting opinion. However, I would like to offer a few comments for the record this morning. Pardon me. One major concern I have with this application is that a major segment of the line, that is approximately 22.5 miles or roughly 1/4 of the entire route of the line, will be located adjacent to an existing Evergy transmission line. And as a result, two major electric transmission lines will be sited parallel to each other along 22.5 miles of the route of the line. Parallel electric transmission lines and their infrastructure can constitute very burdensome, untenable, and adverse encumbrances on the land. And in this instance, in my opinion, make the proposed route of this line unreasonable. How does this happen? The Southwest Power Pool, or SPP, is the electric grid operator for Kansas and 16 other states. As such, the SPP controls the process by which some transmission lines are authorized to be constructed, including this proposed line. Following that process, the state must then consider the reasonableness of the proposed route of the line and approve or disapprove the line siting proposal. That is the process that is now before the Commission. Based upon testimony at the evidentiary hearing, there was unanimity among the parties in this docket that the SPP transmission line authorization process, in this instance, was flawed in certain important respects. Specifically, this flawed SPP vetting process precluded the KCC staff from providing timely input regarding local issues and concerns at certain consequential stages in the SPP managed decision-making processes. The Commission order recognizes that the SPP would have benefited from involving the Commission at the outset or certainly earlier in its review processes. Unfortunately, it did not. Under the circumstances, granting this siting permit, in my opinion, without remanding important issues to the SPP for its reconsideration, gives only passing acknowledgement of the serious costs, consequences, and burdens for affected Kansas landowners and other stakeholders, while favoring and advancing more immediate regional SPP benefits. As a result of the approval of this line siting application, affected landowners along a 22.5 mile segment of this line will have their lands encumbered in perpetuity by two parallel large electric transmission lines traversing their properties. I am very concerned about the potential consequences of this outcome, including the effect these encumbrances may have on land values and on future alternative uses of the affected lands. The commission must balance the potential benefits of this transmission line with its impact on Kansas landowners and other local stakeholders. In this instance, the commission is placed in the difficult position of choosing between denying or delaying construction of the proposed line and foregoing some potential benefits in the short term, or approving and permitting a proposed route for a line where the interests of Kansas landowners and stakeholders, in my opinion, have not been timely and adequately considered. The quest for expediency and results in achieving regional electric grid transmission planning and execution goals should never override or supplant the absence of adequate and timely consideration of the very real long-term consequences to be visited by large transmission lines on landowners and other affected local stakeholders. In this instance, an SPP transmission line evaluation and selection process that is acknowledged to be flawed, in my opinion, should not proceed to fruition without reconsideration and redress. Accordingly, for these and other reasons set out in my dissenting opinion, I respectfully dissent from the commission order. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner King. Commissioner French, do you have comments, please?
Yes, to start, I will be voting in favor of the order. I will not be attaching any written concurring opinion, so I would like to make some oral comments this morning. So we've had two proceedings to look at this transmission project. The first was focused on NextEra's qualifications to be a Kansas utility and whether the transmission line they plan to build is needed by our state. That was all described by Mr. Cohen. This proceeding, where we decide whether to grant a siting permit, is very focused on landowner impacts and how to mitigate those with a reasonable route. Unfortunately, that means most of our focus has been on the negative impacts of this new infrastructure, particularly the burden on specific residents, farms, and other stakeholders along its path, and rightly so, as it should in this case. Like all large-scale infrastructure, this transmission line, however much it is needed or benefits the state, will carry burdens as well. Those burdens may not be on the same scale as projects like new highways or reservoirs, but they can be significant. I think the parties in this docket have done a good job of working together and with local communities to identify common sense solutions and alternative routes that will reasonably mitigate those burdens. Now, Kansas law requires this commission to issue a siting permit for a transmission line when the route is reasonable and the line is needed. To determine need, we're directed to consider benefits to both consumers in Kansas and consumers outside the state and economic development benefits in Kansas. For this transmission line, the benefits were just overwhelmingly obvious. There's been some really unfortunate and misleading media coverage about this project, but the evidence in our dockets has been crystal clear that this transmission line was planned to relieve grid congestion and allow lower cost electricity to flow into the eastern half of Kansas. And it's an economic project that will put downward pressure on Kansans' electric bills. And it's not often that we have an opportunity to build a project that actually pays for itself quickly with these economic benefits, while also improving the reliability and resiliency of our grid. And let me just put one more point of emphasis on that. As we've discussed in these proceedings, this project is a large regional project where customers in many other states are helping to pay for the cost of the project. In fact, Kansas will only pay a small percentage of the cost to build this line, even though a large portion of benefits will flow to our residents and businesses. This regional system of spreading costs across many states works because transmission infrastructure is consistently planned and built in all the states, with everyone getting their share of projects. If Kansas were to effectively veto or reject this line, we'd be making a pretty unbelievable choice. We'd be signaling that we're happy to pay for infrastructure in other states, but when projects come along for us that other states will help pay for, we'll pass on those. Of course, that kind of policy of only paying for other states' infrastructure makes no sense. And it certainly doesn't protect or promote the interests of Kansas citizens or our businesses. In fact, I think that would be one of the more damaging policies we could take for electric utility customers and future economic development in Kansas. Now, a couple of words about the so-called double circuit option that we required NextEra and Evergy to evaluate. And I agree, this was a very complicated subject. In short, a portion of this line will run parallel to an existing Evergy transmission line. And we wondered if co-locating those lines on a single set of poles was a viable option to reduce the impact on landowners in that area. I personally was very interested in this option. And even after NextEra, Evergy, and our staff, the party that initially proposed we investigate double circuiting, took the position prior to hearing that it was not reasonable, I was still very interested up until our evidentiary hearing because of the potential opportunity to reduce burden on landowners. That said, the evidence we received at hearing, particularly including information about the bids SPP received in its competitive solicitation process, made it very clear that this option is not a reasonable or even a desirable option for Kansas utility customers. And that's even assuming operational challenges and legal complications are set aside, though of course reality would require us to contend with those potentially insurmountable obstacles. In short, the double circuit option, as it's been presented here, is unreasonable and more relevant to the legal standards in this case. The existence of a potential double circuiting option with its own positive and negative aspects is certainly not substantial evidence that the proposed route is unreasonable. Next, I want to make a few comments about the competitive process that brought this project and the developer of this project to Kansas. As far as I know, this is only the second transmission line to be subjected to competitive bidding in Kansas, and it's the first to reach this stage and be cited. This proceeding showed us both the tremendous upside and the potential pitfalls of competition for large utility infrastructure projects. For context, in the absence of a competitive process, these types of projects would still be built, but they would just be built by the local monopoly utility. So in the case of this line, it would have been built by Evergy. So a couple of takeaways from how that process worked in this case. First, the obvious benefit was the cost of the project. Subjecting this project to competitive bidding appears to have saved customers an incredible amount of money, with the winning bid coming in more than 40% lower than expected. That's customer savings of tens of millions of dollars. And that bid included substantial cost containment guarantees and an earlier in-service date that would deliver reliability and economic benefits sooner than the planner had required. And I would add that having a competitive result in this area also gives regulators like us a new ability to do some benchmarking with our local utilities. We can now ask questions like why they have such different construction standards from the competitive entity, even though both appear to be acceptable from a safety and regulatory standpoint. And are there new innovative materials and construction techniques our utilities can adopt as a result of this experience with competition that can lower costs or improve service for customers? So competition brought us some great results, but that apparent success was not unqualified. I think we've got some real lessons learned coming out of this. First, unless a local utility wins the project, a competitive process is usually going to mean a new entity without a relationship to local customers and landowners will be developing the infrastructure. This can be particularly problematic, and I'm not sure what the solution is. Because there was a bidding process, the winning bidder didn't even know they'd be building the project until recently. So there really isn't much time for it to engage with the local community. In my view, this is a downside of the competitive bidding process, and that was confirmed by public comments, some of which expressly stated that they had more trust and would rather work with the local utility company. I also think we need to improve how the competitive bidding process anticipates regulatory and siting concerns of the states. And we'll be engaging with the Southwest Power Pool on that and also exploring here whether we need to adopt more guidance for future infrastructure siting. So to wrap up, I have to reiterate that this commission is obligated to follow the standards in Kansas law, including the benefits to Kansas consumers and economic benefits to the state to promote and protect the public interest. We very much do have the power to veto a line if it doesn't deliver benefits or if the proposed route has an outsized or unwarranted impact on landowners. But that's not a reasonable outcome in this case, and it wouldn't be a responsible use of our power. Rejecting this project might be popular in some circles, and I know we've all seen discussion of this project in political forums, but we aren't politicians. We've been given all the facts. We've heard from the public. We're an informed and unbiased decision-making body. We have to do our jobs, follow the law and the facts, and approve the outcome that clearly benefits the people and the businesses of the state as a whole. And that outcome is to grant a citing permit in this case. So I will be voting yes on the proposed order before us this morning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner French. In terms of my comments, I subscribe to all that was said so eloquently by Commissioner French. I would add that this project was recommended back in 2019. 4 years later, there's not a pole in the ground at this point. A major component of this project has to do with reliability. And I will tell you that reliability is top of my list as we head into what could be a really hot and demanding summer on all our utilities throughout the state. Already this summer, SPP, the entity that we belong to and have benefited by being a member of with lower rates throughout the entire state, but we are a member of this entity. There's already been warnings and we're only in the month of May. We can't build this fast enough, and 4 years have already gone by. I believe that the facts that were presented at the evidentiary hearing, the discussion that was held by experts on the matter, and in addition, the experts at SPP on the industry expert panel that recommended this project by this utility to be built, all of those facts compel me to vote aye on this matter. We have to balance the interests. And I understand that as we go through the great farmlands of this state, there is very much a downside. The compensation that the farmers receive hopefully will offset the concerns that they have. I also would like to discuss that the process needs improvement. But we are so far into this that for us to apply the brakes when state law demands that we issue an order based on these facts, and SPP has their own process to say time out, we want do-overs, cannot happen. This line is needed. Reliability for all Kansans that when they flip the switch is needed. And with that, I will be voting aye on this matter. So at this point, I would ask, Commissioner French, do you have a motion?
I think we've already got a motion
Okay,
and a second on the table.
All right, so I guess we're just ready for the vote. Thank you. All those in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No,
Thank you. We have a vote of 2-1. The motion passes. The order is approved. Commissioners, are there any other matters to come before this body today?
I would move that we adjourn.
Second.
There is a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. The motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Be safe, be well.
Take care.